Greetings, mateys. Ahoy, they just got played. Today we be going to be nattering about a couple of games. First up, the original Libertalia from 2012. We be going to compare that to the newest version from 2022 called Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. We be going to natter about all the changes and all the things that didn't. So join us as we give you all the ins and outs in Libertalia versus Libertalia Winds of Galecrest.
Hi, this is Steven from Just Got Played, and today I'm going to compare Libertalia with Libertalia. So back in 2012, Marabunta released this version of Libertalia, designed by Paolo Mori, with art from Ben Carre. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And now in 2022, Stonemaier Games has given Paolo Mori another crack at it, this time with art by Lamaro Smith, and this is Libertalia Winds of Galecrest. So now if you look at the boxes, you can see they're both approximately the same size, height, width, length, everything. The Winds of Galecrest, however, is about 65% heavier. And when we look at some of the components, I think you'll be able to see why that is. I should also note that the original was 2 to 6 players, whereas Winds of Galecrest is 1 to 6 players. They have an automa. I don't play games solo, so I'm not really going to talk about that. But if you want to play the game solo, this is definitely the version for you. All right, let's open up the boxes and take a look at the boards next. And here we have the two main boards. So the original Libertalia looks like this. It has art on the back, but it's not really a two-sided board. The new Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest, is a double-sided board. So there's the calm side, and then there's the stormy side. I'm going to be talking about the calm side here because it most closely matches the experience of the original game. So you can see here, there's a place for the 6 potential cards to put out. It tells you that it goes from day to night, just like this, day to night. This one actually has a reminder about dusk, which is nice. I will say that the new version has 2-player rules, specific things about 2 players. So, for instance, there's this midshipman that goes out and sort of makes it feel more like a 3-player game. So keep that in mind if you're interested in the 2-player version of the game. All right, so now if you move down on this board, you see there's the loot area. So in the original, the loot was just laid out here, and there were 6 days in each voyage. So each 3 voyages, 6 days each. You can see in the new version, there are still 6 days, but Voyage 1 only has 4 days, and Voyage 2 has 5, and Voyage 3 has 6. That's interesting because it means that you won't be using as many because you're still drawing 6 cards from the deck each voyage, but you're not using as many of them in this version of the game early on. So there's a little more variety in what's in each player's hand. So depending on whether you like that or not, you might like one version or the other. It's also worth noting that out here in a 2-player game, you're going to put 3 tokens, again, part of simulating 2 players, sort of simulating a 3-player experience. One of the biggest differences here is in the new version is the reputation track. So there's going to be all 6 markers out here, regardless of how many players you have. And these move up and down. And this is how you break ties in the new version instead of the numbers at the bottom of the cards when the exact same numbers are played. Also, it gives you doubloons at the start of the round, which is sort of interesting. So next, as you go down into this area, there's sort of a cheat sheet about stuff in the game. Now, in the original Libertalia, in the player area, there's a cheat sheet. So we'll talk about the player area next. But in this version, if you look at it, the chest is the same. The barrel is very similar, except it gives you an extra reputation. The relic is the same. The amulet is the same. The map is different. You will see by default that instead of 2 map tokens gives you 7. Whereas in the original, 2 gave you nothing. You only got points if you got 3 of the map tokens. The saber is the same, and the Spanish officer has been replaced by Hook. So in the original version, the Spanish officer made you discard the character that you had instead of putting them in your den. And then there was a way to exchange Spanish officers for other loot in the bag. But here, the hook, you can either gain doubloons or keep a character in your ship for the next voyage. And that's an anchor ability. So it's at the end of the voyage. Also note that the new version has these additional tiles. So you can change up the rules for any of these things as you want. So I mentioned the backside, the stormy side has, it's more interactive, sort of devious things, complex things that can be going on. But you can also just sort of change the game up a little bit with a lot of these different tiles. So that's a nice element of the new version. All right, so next, let's move on and talk about the player area. We have the play areas here. So this is the original Libertalia, and this is Winds of Galecrest, and it's very similar. So up here, you have what's called the den, whereas here it's called the ship. Off to the side, you have a graveyard. This one actually comes with a tile that you can use as a graveyard. You have your decks that you've not drawn from. You have the cards that you have in your hand. This version has, cardboard doubloons, which I think are pretty nice, actually. These are just the 1s and 5s. And then here's the new version, the doubloons. I would say the old version has better doubloons. Stonemaier does make, of course, metal coins that you can use if you want. Here are the loot tokens. So, I grabbed 3 of the loot tokens from the original version. You've got the treasure chest, the map, and the relic. And you can see here, there's the treasure map, the treasure chest, and the relic from the new version. Now, one thing to note about the new version, these are obviously a nice component quality, but they are double-sided. So in the original game, you would put your tokens face down, and people around the table would not know what you had. But now, you put those, these, you can't put them face down. They're double-sided. So that is not hidden information. In the new version as well, there is this to keep track of your score. So you just turn this to, whatever number you need to have for your score. And then the old version had this scoreboard. And you would put one of your tokens on the scoreboard, and move it around. I'm actually a fan of the scoreboard itself because it's easier to look at and see how people are doing. But that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at this version. All right, so next we're going to take a look at the cards themselves because the original version had 30 cards and the new version has 40, but you can see some of them are very similar. Now let's talk about the player's cards. So the original game had 30 cards. Winds of Galecrest has 40, but there are a lot of similarities here, right? So the parrot and the scout, if you look at them, very similar abilities. The beggar, I'll let you look at the 2 beggars there, similar as well. I felt the recruiter and the innkeeper were very similar. The cabin boy, somewhat similar anyway. Obviously some differences there. The preacher, very similar. Difference in the number of doubloons there, of course. The barkeep, similar again, although you can get more doubloons for having barrel tokens. The carpenter, right? Pretty, you can see the numbers are different, but the ability is very similar. The French officer and the officer, very similar as well. You get some reputation here, and you can get up to 12 doubloons. But this is getting you up to, getting 5 if you're low. The freed slave versus the freed prisoner. Again, not exactly the same, but very similar types of capabilities, getting doubloons for characters that have a higher rank. The mutineer, very similar, discarding the lowest ranked character on the ship. The brute, More fun characters in the game. Very similar, although this one affects reputation. The Gunner. Again, it's about discarding a character from your den or the ship. The Bosun. Getting money for lower ranked characters. The Cook. Getting an extra booty tile. The Armorer. So again, there's a thing for gaining reputation here, but otherwise getting doubloons for sabers. All right, discarding tiles to get funds. So the Merchant. The Surgeon, letting you take characters back into your hand, and people don't get to know what you brought back into your hand. The Treasurer, getting money for tokens you have. The Gambler, paying money for your booty tiles, but then getting some at the end of the voyage. I felt the Governor's Daughter and the Aristocrat were similar. I mean, there's reputation over here, but otherwise it's about gaining funds if you're the only person with that character in your ship. The Quartermaster, so the numbers are different, obviously, in what you lose, and there are numbers up here as well. All right, the First Mate. So getting money for each character in your den or your ship, but you lose up here. You also lose, and again, the number's pretty high in both those. Granny Wata and the Wind Nymph, very similar. The Spanish Governor and the Governor, the highest card in each game. Very similar, discarding characters from your den, and there's a reputation gain here. There's some other cards that were, somewhat similar, I guess. Here's the Top Man. So just, getting doubloons, but here you gain and then lose some. There's a Captain. This one talks about the reputation track, whereas this one was all about doubloons. And so what other cards were there? All right, so the original had the Monkey, which I didn't feel was represented in this game. It's an awful mean card. The Waitress. I don't know why. It just didn't seem to be anything about discarding maps to get money. The Voodoo Witch, getting doubloons for each of your discarding characters. The Spanish Spy, of course, centers around the Spanish officers, which isn't even in the new version of the game. So that was 4. So obviously there's 4 plus the 10, which are new characters in the new version, right? So there's the Collector, getting funds for having different types of loot tokens. If the inventory, is the largest one played, they give you some money. This is switching loot tokens between days of a voyage, putting a character directly from your hand into your ship, which is interesting. The Thief, this is taking a loot token, which you lose reputation, taking it from one of your adjacent players, which is a player to your right or left. This is neat. So something to counter the Brawler. So that's kind of cool. The Necromancer, getting a character back from your graveyard, so different from the Surgeon, using a relic to do that. The Witch lets you copy other abilities. The Bodyguard, you're basically giving up Saber and Hook tokens and getting money. The Smuggler, which has the daytime ability to take a loot token and then go into the ship. So they just kind of take something and get out of the way. It's pretty interesting. Getting reputation for map tokens, and doubling the value of it potentially as well. The Stowaway, giving you a random loot token from the bag, which is sort of cool, and then gets discarded. The Bandit, reputation track manipulation, and the Apprentice, using the daytime ability character that's in your ship. So those are the differences and similarities for the cards in the 2 different versions. All right, so that is basically everything about the old version of Libertalia and the new version of Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest. So what is my recommendation to you? Well, First of all, if you already have Libertalia, unless you want the solo play of this version, or you play a lot at 2-player, then I wouldn't recommend going out and getting this version. This, I think, is the superior version. If you were to go find both of these for the same price, I would say definitely get this one. If you were to find both of these, this one new at a higher price and this older used game for a lower price, then that would be, a more difficult thing. It would depend on your budget and the actual price differential. So anyway, if you already have this one, just keep it. If you don't have either of them, I would suggest trying to get this one. And if you're like me and you have both versions, then take this one and gift it to somebody else and keep this one. All right. If you guys have any questions about anything I've showed you in this video, just let me know. Otherwise, thanks. I'll catch you next time.
We hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please leave a comment or hit the like button. It really does help us out. If you have suggestions for future videos, let us know in the comments as well, and then subscribe to see what we come up with next.